We're starting with the Gemara in Lamed Gimel and Beis. Darish Rabbi Yossi Brei Rava Mishmei de Rava. Himek tefach psula. If you're maimek tefach, it was you dug into the, let's say you had a stone wall in the doorway, so you dug into it. More than a tefach, it's puzzle. Then Messiah Hanika with Patsan of Tala le Malbin. We have some tefach tzark mezuzah acheres, even without any tzark mezuzah acheres. So Rashi has two pshatim in this Gemara. What this case is Tala Malbin is either it's talking about a case where you have a corner of a house and you have a doorway on this side and a doorway on this side, and they sort of open out into each other. If one is open, if one is closed, then the other one can open, or vice versa. So then, if there's a tefach in the one doorway has a mezuzah in it, the other one does not. So if there's more than a tefach between the two, then the second doorway also needs a mezuzah. If it's less than a tefach, then all you need is one mezuzah. That's one shot in Rashi. The other shot is you have two doorways side by side. One is a big one, and one is a little doorway, like the wealthy people have. They open their big, huge doorway when they have a lot of chashuv people coming in. Otherwise, they just use the small doorway every day. So then Rashi learns that's also if there is a tefach between them, then both doorways need a mezuzah, and if less than a tefach, then one mezuzah on the big one takes care of the small one. So that's what Rashi learns. So we see that the concept of a tefach is always a division, or we spoke about this in the past already. We learned the sugya of the achori adelis, that if it's within a tefach, according to Rashi, it was within a tefach of the back of the door, it's still considered within the framework of the door. The tefach is always in Hilchos Mezuzah, for what Chazal shows that's the chashivus of a makam, that it's a makam b'fnei atzmo. It's within the tefach, it's considered within that place, and outside the tefach, it's without the place. So, huadin, we want to say that if you were maimik, you went deeper than a tefach, then it's no longer considered within the doorway because it's more than a tefach away. So the Gemara tried to bring a raya from this Malbin, and it says Kitanya hi b'Pesach she'achari hadelas, which the two pshatim in Pesach she'achari hadelas are what we just discussed a minute ago. The two Mahalach and two Lashonos of Rashi. That's the dechia. Say that over there it's a special. We're being docha to say that if it's more than a tefach, then the other door is chashav enough to have its own special chiyuv. But it's not a raya necessarily that if it's a tefach deep, then it's going to be puzzle, because maybe if it's not connected to anything else except for that doorway, it's just tefach deep. Maybe it still connects to that door. To me, it's not a raya. So where it says you can't say that. Pesach she'achari hadelas v'hed yaktani la. Pesach she'achari hadelas v'yasham tefach tzark mezuzah acheres and lav ein tzark mezuzah acheres. We already learned that before. So the more answer. So how could that be pshat? The more answer is ketzak tani. Tana hemi the malben shokanim. I'm sorry, ketzak tani. It's telling us that it's one is explaining the other. So we're ending up with that pshat, the two pshat of Rashi that over there, that we don't necessarily have a raya to that from that case, because it's different because there's two separate doors, and the chiddush of more or less than a tefach is whether each door has considered a makam b'fnei atzmo, an opening b'fnei atzmo or not, to be mechayev a separate mezuzah. But it's not going to be a raya to this halacha of Rava, that if it's himik tefach, if you went to tefach in, it's not a raya that's going to be possible. Okay, so even though it's not a raya to that, even though we don't have an actual raya, but still the halacha in Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch bring this halacha down as halacha ma'isa, that if it is himik tefach, then it's going to be possible. If it's a tefach deep, then it is a problem because it's no longer considered in the doorway once it's more than a tefach in, because this shear of a tefach always is a definition of the proper amount of space that's considered shaykh to one place or another. Within a tefach, it's part of that space. Outside of tefach, it's considered outside of that space. And so we have both of these halachos brought down. So it comes out that we have two separate chedushim in our sugya. One is that this din of himik tefach, and hu din, we said if you put a malbin on top of it, if you put another brick on top of it, which is tefach, so you put the mezuzah to begin with in the doorway properly, but then you covered it over with another covering, which is more than a tefach, like a brick or something over it. So that, or hemik tefach, or if you dug tefach in, they're both considered possible. They're not considered in the doorway anymore once they have a tefach covering over them, one way or the other, either in depth or in covering over. It's two separate halachas. Now the Aruch HaShulchan, the lashon of Shulchan Aruch is that you should yimasmer o yaniach or yachbor. Shulchan Aruch says either you can nail it up or you can dig into the wall. So the Aruch HaShulchan just points out that you see from the fact that he says either this or that if you did dig it out and then you just inserted the mezuzah in there even without any nails, that's still kosher because it's not going anywhere. So the din because the fact that Shulchan Aruch only mentions the nails if you put it on the outside or if you dig it in. So you see clearly that you don't need to have nails if it is dug in. That's the minhag in a lot of places in Yerushalayim, especially old Yerushalayim. They used to have them dug in, but then a lot of times they would have a layer of some kind of cement over it, and you would just leave a little spot where you see the shin. But it was very common in Yerushalayim, or Rabbi Shlomo Zalman's house, and the Pesach Hashar over there, the gateway to getting up the stairs, and many other old houses in Yerushalayim I used to go to. They were dug out into the brick or into the stone. That was very common, but we end up with two separate chedushim in the sugya. One is going to be that if something is covered with a cover more than a tefach, that's possible, as well as if you have two doorways that are sort of attached, so they both serve at the same place, and if they have less than a tefach between them, then one mezuzah is sufficient, and if not, you need two mezuzahs. That's what we see from this sugya. And going on to the next point of the Gemara. Tana, Hemed al Malbin Shalkanim, Chotek Shoferes Amenicha. If you want to put a brick, sort of it's not actually a brick, it's like the house sometimes were made out of kanim, out of reeds. So you can cut the shoferes, you can cut one of these reeds and then insert the mezuzah into it, and that's considered in the doorway. Amar Racha Breder Rava, Lo Yishanu El Shehemed El Besov Chatach Veinicha. This only is kosher if first you establish a mezuzah, and then you attach the reed onto the doorpost, and then you cut it, and then you put the mezuzah in. Aval chatach ve'iniach l'sof hamid psula tasa v'lo min asui. Here the Gemara says a very important halacha, which is really negate to many places in Shas, the concept of tasa v'lo min asui, that where the Torah says when there's lashon asiyah, like there is by mezuzah, with the Torah, one of the places, one of the psukim says that mezuzah's tasa mezuzah's beisecha, lashon tasa, lashon asiyah. The lashon of asiyah tells us that you have to do it when it's already kosher. You have to set it. You have to put it in a way which it doesn't need anything else to make it kosher afterwards. It has to already be totally kosher, and then but the final touch should be the mitzvah. Like we find the same halacha. Rashi says we learned this out from Tzitzis. The Rashi says the same halacha in Amud Aleph as well. Remember, Rashi learned by the sugya of the Reish Galusa, where Reish Galusa asked Reb Nachman to put on the mezuzahs, and before they put at the doorposts. So Rashi said over there that he said to him, Tali Dasha Beresha. Tali Dasha Beresha, Rashi said, means Hamed Hasifa Bebina and Tchila. First, put up the doorpost. And then afterwards put the mezuzahs up. To Gamrina Mitzitzis, we learn out the halacha of Mitzitzis that it says Tzitzis Tase Lebigdacha. You should make tzitzis for your begadim. So there it says Tase, lashon asiyah by tzitzis. T'chsiva Tase v'lo min asui. You can't make it already asui, meaning that you can't, let's say, have take a corner, take 4 corners of a beged, detach from the beged, put the tzitzis into them, tie them with tzitzis in, and then attach those 4 corners back to the beged. So, because that's tasiv alum asu, you have to make tzitzis for the beged, but don't put on tzitzis that are already asu. Because if it's already asu, you're not tasiv, you're not making it in the beged, you're putting it on in a way that's already asu, it's already done. And that's possible by tzitzis. Rashi says that that's the makar for the concept of tasiv and asu by mezuzah as well. So the Pashas Rashi means over there Rashi learned the case was that for whatever reason the Reish Galusa he wanted to put up the doorposts already ready to go. So he was building a new house. The doorposts were the frames of the doorposts still down, and he wanted Rav Nachman to put the mezuzahs on all the doorposts. Then when he puts them up, then they're already done and ready. So that Rav Nachman informed him that no, you have to do the other way around. You have to be Osef, you have to Tasa, you have to put the mezuzahs on when there's already a doorpost. The doorpost is a chelik of the Pesach it says Beisecha Visharecha. That's the shar, is the doorpost. So you have to put the mezuzah when it's already a shar in the house, not before it's a shar, and then just becomes a shar with a mezuzah. That would be asu, that it's already done, not tasa. So Rashi says that's the makar for this din. In the same halacha, Rashi learns over here that Rashi says the words that Malbin Shalkanim Shalom Matzah Mezuzahs Ha'etz. So all that hard and asked, they don't understand where he's coming from. Why is it important for Rashi to find a doorpost of wood? Where does it say wood in the Torah? He's only Rashi saying like a teretz. Why would he use kanim? Because he couldn't find wood. Why is it Rashi's job to tell us that? So the Achronim asked that nobody really has an answer. So Rashi says the case was you didn't have a wooden one, you had this kanim, but also tzuras hapesach shel kanim. Malbin mezuzah saf. So you made the whole doorway was made out of reeds. So there Rashi says that you have to go ahead and cut it out first. Cut the last reed first that's already attached to the wall. But if you put it up after you already put the mezuzah in the reed, then you attach it. That's a problem. Rashi says lo mishum taslim and asli. According to Rashi, it's interesting that our case is exactly the same case as the case of the Reish Galusa, like we just pointed out. And Tosas has that problem as well. Tosas over there in Lam Gimel Amad asked the Kashan Rashi that they should have brought this Maisa, according to Rashi, the Reish Galusa, after the Gemara in Amid Beis, when the Gemara is Machadash this din of Tasalim and Asri. So why would the Gemara separate it and have two separate things that are the exact same din? There as well, Rashi, Tosas asked the Kashan Rashi that if the problem is Tasalim and Asri, so then why did it say doors? Why didn't it say doorways? Dasha is a door in Aramaic. So that's a problem with Rashi. Why did it say, according to Rashi, it's only the door post, not the door? And why would the Gemara separate it? So Tosas goes on to say, if you remember that Tosas learned a different shot, that it's not because of Tasalim and Asli, it's a whole different thing. It's a continuation there, the previous Gemara of Hekeret Tzir, that you need to have a Hekeret Tzir, and he's saying that the Hekeret Tzir should go up before putting up the rest of the doorway and the mezuzahs to know which way it's supposed to be on. That's Tosas shot. But Rashi learns what he learns, which the Rambam, as we saw then, learns like Rashi, but with one kinich, with one nuance. The Rambam says, Ma'amidim hadalasos, b'charka kovim mezuzah. Put up the doors and then put on the mezuzah. And so the Rambam is telling us that he's learning Pshat in the Gemara. When the Gemara says Dashi, put up the doors first, it means like it says. It means actually doors. With that, the Rambam answers the Kasha Tosas. when it says doors, it means doors. But he learns shot like Rashi that it's Tasa Lam and Asui. Just that according to the Rambam, the Kasha Tosis falls off. That why didn't the two cases come together? Because the case in Amud Beis is talking about the doorway has to be up before you put a mezuzah into it. And here it's telling us a different chiddush, according to the Rambam. As we spoke about a couple of shiurim ago, that the Rambam knows in this Gemara chiddush that a door is ma'akev and mezuzah. The door is ma'akev. And therefore, Rav Nachman told the Reish Galusa that you have to put the door up before you put it in the mezuzah, otherwise it's tasav v'lo min asui. As we saw back then, we discussed the Kesef Mishnah brought from Chachmei Lunil. They asked this kasha on the Rambam, as well as does the Ravid in Halacha Aleph, that what does Rambam see tasav v'lo min asui? The problem is, like Tosfos says, the problem is because of seer. You have heker seer, it has to be up before you put the mezuzah. So the Rambam in his Tshuva answers up that who's talking about heker seer just because the Gemara before is heker seer means this is heker seer? No, that's heker seer, and this is a whole different din that it's not considered a shar unless there's an actual door. And the Torah is not Machayev Pesach, it's Machayev a shar. So this is what the Gemara the Rambam learns it from. According to the Rambam, he's Marviach. He's gaining that the two kashas of Tosfos fall off on him, that it's two separate kedushin from here in Amud Beis, as well as the Gemara is very meduyak when it means doors, not doorways, doorposts. So this a very important halacha, tasa min asui, which really applies many places in Shas. But let's talk about it a little bit here in Mezuzah. That what the Achronim will discuss, and this is where we can get into this question. What would be, since Rambam tells us that if you put up first the mezuzahs and then the door, then you have a problem with tasa min asui. But let's say that's not very common. You know, a person usually puts the mezuzahs after the house is totally done, doors are up. Not a very common thing to happen. What's more common, and happens happens all the time, is if you already have the doors up and you have a mezuzah up properly, and then you, for one reason or another, you have to take down the door. Let's say sometimes you're moving a new piece of furniture in the room and there's not enough room for the furniture. The workers immediately take off the door and they put it back up again. So according to the Rambam, the definition of a shar is that some chayav and mezuzah is a door in the doorway, having an actual door there. So now we can ask a shaila that if the door comes down and then it goes back up again, so since Bisman that it was down, there was no door there, it wasn't a shar, and the mezuzah was like in a non-shar and a non-makam chiyuv. So that being now machayev, would that be a problem of tasa min asui when you put the door back up again? Would that necessitate taking the mezuzah down and putting it back up again after the door is already on there? Is that a problem of tasa min asui or not, according to the Rambam? So in Rashi and the other Rishonim, we're not going to have the same question because they all hold that the Dela is not ma'akev. The door, actual door, physical door is not ma'akev as long as you have a doorway. So that wouldn't have that question. The question would be different according to Rashi. If for one reason or the other, let's say you're remodeling or something like that, you need to take down the doorway. You have to take down the whole door frame. Or it could happen sometimes even when they move furniture. Sometimes it even happens they have to actually take the door frame down and put that back up again. More difficult, but it happens sometimes. So the same question according to Rashi will be that we had in the Rambam. If you take the door frame down with its mezuzah, you put it up to begin with properly. You put it up kalacha, and when it was already up. And now you take it down with its mezuzah. Can I put it back up again the way it is? And it's still going to be okay. Or is there going to be a problem with tasa min asui? Tasa min asui we learned before is when you put it up to begin with, it was tasa min asui. It was asui already. The very first time you put the doorway up, it already had the mezuzah on. That's what Rav Nachman told Reish Galusa is no good. But the other way around, if it already was put on properly and then it was taken down and put back up again, would that be tasa min asui? Would you say that when it came down, that it's not a doorway anymore? It's just pieces of wood. It's not a doorway. Or you could say maybe not. Maybe if you're going to put it back in the same spot and you have intention to put it back up, it never stopped being a doorway. It just was a doorway. It was removed for a short time, and now it's okay. So now this theoretically this case is much worse than the case of the Rambam, because in the Rambam himself, when the understanding of the needing of a doorway is not so clear. From his words in the Tshuva that we saw in the Kesef Mishnah, which is brought in Perek Vav, Perek Shishi of Mezuzah Halacha Hey, that's where the Kesef Mishnah brought down that whole Tshuva's Rambam. So there, the Rambam would seem to indicate that, I mean, even more than seem to, it's pretty clearly that the definition of a shar, which is Chayv Mezuzah, is only with the door, and otherwise it's not called a shar, it's called a Pesach, and Pesach is not Chayv Mezuzah, which others disagree, but that's the Rambam's opinion. And we see actually the Halacha L'Maisa, we spoke last time, that we're choshesh for the Shutas Rambam.
Yeah, I'll come back and get the change.
We if we put up a mezuzah without a door, then we don't make a bracha L'Maisa. We just put it up without a bracha.
Yeah.
So we are choshesh for the Shutas Rambam L'Maisa.
Shall I tell you?
Is there a question out there? No. Okay, so we have to determine in the Rambam that is taking off the door an elemental chisaron in the whole chiyuv of mezuzah now, in a way that it's tantamount to Rashi's taking off the doorway. It's just as chomer to take off the door in the Rambam as take off the whole doorway according to Rashi. You're totally removing the chiyuv, or you could say maybe it's better. Maybe even if we might paskin that taking off the doorway is a problem because you took off the entire place of the mezuzah, you actually moved the mezuzah itself. Maybe Rambam's case is better. Maybe we just take off the door, but the doorway remains intact with this mezuzah. You never actually move the mezuzah, so maybe that would not be masalik or mafkia. It's not going to remove the asiyah, the maisa that you did when you put the mezuzah first up. Because maybe you have to do something to the actual mezuzah to make a difference in that. So that's really a question we have to analyze. I'll just thought parenthetically that we can keep in mind what we spoke about one or two shurim ago, that there is, in order to answer certain steers in the Rambam, there is an opinion according to the Rambam that the Rambam doesn't always make it possible when there's no door. Only a type of door which covers a place which is a makam tsenua that needs a door. We'll see in the next sugi coming up that we have certain types of structures which don't have doors at all, and they never have doors, and not supposed to have doors, like an exadra, which is supposed to be open to an open place to walk in and out of, that the Rambam might hold over there that it should be chayav and mezuzah even though there is no door, because maybe a door is only necessary in a place like a house. It's just like the Rambam holds that a house without a roof is not a house, and it's patur from mezuzah. Also, a house without a door is an actual door is not a house, because you can't live in a house that's totally open. Anyone who wants can walk into it. That's not a makom tsenua. You can't do things that people do in houses when it's wide open to the rishus rabbin. So once we say that in the Rambam, so then perhaps a door is less of a defining factor of the actual doorway than we think it is in the Rambam. Maybe it depends, or maybe it's more that the doorway is the real chiyuv. The door is a t'nai, but it's not part of the actual chiyuv. That's what we have to analyze. We have to understand. Or maybe the other way. Maybe in those type of places where you do need a door for tznius, like the front door of the house, then in those places the Rambam Taka holds that without a door is really not a doorway at all. So it's not just a t'nai in the chiyuv. It's not just a stipulation to be chayav, but it's part of the actual chiyuv itself. And that might be enough kamina the gavi tasav elim and asli. Because perhaps only if you take away something which is a t'nai to the chiyuv, and then you put it back on again, then it will not be a problem tasav and asli, because you never removed the original chiyuv, essential chiyuv. Mashen can, if you did something which took away the essential chiyuv and then you put it back again, maybe that was mavatal, the original asiyah, and now it's a new asiyah. So and the new asiyah is releasing the action because the mezuzah is already attached. So it's tasal and asli. That's really the question. I'll make sure everybody's following the question here. Anybody have any questions before we go on?
Yes, Ravi, can I ask a question?
Sorry?
Hi, can I ask a question? With regards to the whole question about the door, maybe setting the being the t'nai for the chov or not. The post can talk about the possibility of, I guess, either buying a house from a Jew who left his mezuzahs up, or even further than that. Let's say the house passed through the hands of a goy and then went back to the hands of a Jew. Are there any chesronos and asiya there? Because the chov was paka and then came back again.
Okay, excellent question, and that it actually is brought up. So we'll see.
Thank you.
So we'll see as we go along, and then remember your question, and we'll make sure we come back to it.
Thank you.
So okay, so first let's take a look at a few makoros on this, and then we'll come back to our thing. So we'll start with the Piskei Tshuva. We have a few Piskei Tshuvas. First in Reish Pei Vav. So this question is direct. We're asking about the doorway is directly addressed by the Achronim. This Tshuva in Reish Pei Vav Yud Gimel says in the name of the Sefer Arbitrary Evan. Not a common Sefer to have, but we printed it out, and it's very fascinating to go through the whole thing inside. This whole discussion here. So here he says that Mashiach Barov Makomos Chadarim Mekarim Imezuzah Besukas Poschem Akiri Besachim Ba'anofim Mezuzah Kvua Bedelis Bachar Sukas Mashlichim Eschach Makrim Imakiri Bekimikeden Mezuzah Kadakoi Koi Im Yafim Oisim Alot. So the question that was asked to the arbitrary Evan was that it's very common in Yerushalayim that people have what they call the shlak roof, where they just roll back the roof. You pull it, you turn the lever and the roof sort of pulls back. It just becomes open to one of the roofs of the house becomes open to the sky. And either they have schach there, they leave there all the time, and they have something under it, and they just take that away, or they put the schach on. So. And sometimes it goes back. Sometimes it's like you just pull a lever and the roof sort of just goes up like that over part of the house. And then if they want, you roll it back down again. If it's going to rain, you can roll it back down again. It's very common in Yerushalayim, in the old Yerushalayim. It's like in Mea Shearim, a lot of houses like that in Mea Shearim. So the shayla that was asked was if you have a shlach, like you open it up for sukkahs. So that room is one of the rooms of the house, and you have a mezuzah there. Now the Rambam paskins, and the Shulchan Aruch paskins that a house without a roof is pater from mezuzah. So during that time that you take the roof off, you took away the chiyuv mezuzah be'etzem because there's no roof there. So that was the shayla that was asked. So he brings down here das gadol echad yesh bazeh tasa mishalom and asli. So this one gadol echad, one gadol paskin that is a problem with tasa and asli. He took away the chiyuv, now chiyuv came back. Alken tzarich acharkach likach misham hamezuzah v'likboa osa michadash l'varach aleh. So this gadol paskin that would be the halacha. You have to take it off and mezuzah and put it back on again with a bracha. Because it was pater l'kuli alma that not only the Rambam but everyone agrees that a house without a roof is pater from mezuzah. Chen helish yesh lahachmer in nishbra hadeles v'nasna osa l'umen l'takno k'shachozer kaveh osa b'shar tzarich l'hotzi mezuzah l'kbo osa michadash b'shut haslam v'nasli. So that gadol paskin the same thing, that since we're choshesh for the shitas Rambam, if the door of the house broke and you had to take it off and have someone fix it and put it back on again, then you should also remove the mezuzah and put it back on, because according to the Rambam, it's pater at that time because tasla and asli. That was the gadol echad who asked the shayla, and it says Rabbal Machaber Cholak Alav. So the arbitrary Evan is cholak on him. First of all, he says that the chiyuv mezuzah never went off of that room with the sukkah. Because if you want to say, because it's Diras Aroy, that cheder is a Diras Keva all year, and even though the roof came off, but it's being used for that purpose right now. So the chiyuv never came off to begin with. But he says even if it would, he says in the potra b'shvil she'ena makura har darka b'kaf har yikumu chatzer. He says it's like a chatzer. The halacha is even the Rambam agrees that a chatzer is chayav in a mezuzah even though it has no roof on it, because that is the norm for a chatzer to have no roof. That's the way it's used. So also for the week of Sukkot, that's the way the room is used without a roof, and therefore it's like a chutzner. The chiyuv was never pakah. Furthermore, he says, so that's a side thing. It never lost the chiyuv. Furthermore, he says, the psul tasel min asli is only kishmitchila naseh b'psul. If it was made to begin with the psul. Al imitchila naseh beheksher. If it was made to begin with in a kosher way, you did the asiyah, you did the maisa, putting out the mezuzah in the proper way, as it was, you fulfilled tasa. They did the tasa properly. Even afterwards, even though it became pater momentarily, even if according to you it really did become pater, not like I said, even it really did become pater, like the roof came off, etc. Nevertheless, when you put it back again, ksherov, aim is a tasel min asli. Not a problem with tasel min asli. And one of his rayas, if you look inside, he just says Ein Shem Baruch, look there at great length. So it is actually a great length over there, a beautiful tshuva there. And one of his biggest rayas is the halacha and the Ramah and Tafresh Chav Vav. And there's other rayas over there as well in Hilchos Sukkah, that if you had the shlach roof, you had this roof that opens and closes, and you have the shlach over here, and it begins to rain. So for a while you close that roof over it, and it finishes raining. Then you open the roof again. So during the time that the roof was down, the sukkah was possible. You can't sit in a sukkah with a roof over it. So during that time, the whole thing was mamish possible. Now that you took it off, the shlach was not considered shlach; it was possible. And when you took it off, so the Ramah Paskins over there with Farish, that it's not a problem with tasel min asli. The sukkah returns back to its hechsher. Why? It was possible during that time. So you see that as long as the asiyah, the original asiyah, was done properly, and you never did anything that was mafkiyah that asiyah, you didn't do anything to the actual sach. You did something around the schach. You made it possible for a side reason. There's a tanai right now that you can't. It's schach kosher, but it didn't become metal. It's schach kosher, but it just has a problem in the lamaisa. You can't sit in it because there's something around it. So that was never mavata, the original asiyah. The asiyah still stands, and it's not tasa lo min asli. So he learns the Arba Torah Evan, who again, if you take off the door, you take off the ceiling, the roof, so then the original asiyah, the mezuzah, as you put it, is still there. And now you had a side reason why it became pater from a chiyuv, but it never affected the actual asiyah of the mezuzah to begin with. That's his psak. And as well as the next Piskei Tshuva, Yud Daled, he brings a similar thing, same thing, but shame Gon Melisa. Gon Melisa is the Chavis Das, the Mesivus. Yaakov Melisa says, "B'siddur tefillah shelo sh'af l'dasa poskim she'im ein delis pater mezuzah." Even according to the Rambam, that the doorway is pater without an actual door mezuzah. Im kava k'shaya delis. If you put the mezuzah on when there was a door, b'char gach notel delis b'chozer v'tola osa im ezach shash from tasel min asli. It says b'ferish, taking the door down and putting it back up again is not a problem with tasa below being asli. He says that's what I wrote before in the name of the Arba Torah Evan. So we have these two gedolim, Arba Torah Evan and the Gon Melisa, not like the Gadol Echad that Artur and brought. There are gedolim out there that held not that way, but the Piskei Tshuva is paskening that it's not a problem with tasel min asli, and it's similar to the halacha of the Ramah and Hilchos Sukkah of the shlach roof going over and back off again. As long as the original asiyah was done, the hechsher, then it remains kosher. That's their mahalach. With the Maisa, we see even more than that. Now, we would infer from what they say that it's only going to be okay of Taslim and Asli because a side thing was taken off, like the door was taken off, the roof was taken off, but the mezuzah stood in its place. The actual Asiyah was never nekar. You never did anything to the actual Asiyah of the mezuzah on the doorpost. However, I found in the Hagros Ammonios, in Perik Vav of mezuzah, Ois Vav, he says in the name of Rabbeinu Simcha, it's a Rishon, Hagros Ammonios is a Rishon, he says in the name of Rabbeinu Simcha, Patzim shebe'emtza Pesach ubeis dlasas shukfura. Okay, he paints a story over here that you have a doorway that has two, there's like a pole in the middle, a wooden pole in the middle. To that wooden pole are attached two doors that, well, I guess one opens this way, one opens that way. And when you walk in, you open this, you go to this door. When you go that way, you open that door. But the hinge is on the pole in the middle. And you have mezuzah only on one side. So, and now, I'm sorry, the mezuzah is on that pole in the middle. The mezuzah is attached to the way in, with the heketzir, whatever, it's for one of the sides of that pole, that's where the mezuzah is. And then he says, if sometimes when you have to bring big packages into there, they can't fit through those two small doors, so they need to remove the entire pole with its doors to bring a big package in, and then they reattach it again. So when they take it down, they're taking it down with the pole and the doors and the mezuzah are all coming down, and then you're putting it back up again. So he says, Avagav shemafarka umatzira mitakna ima mezuzah, even though you take it down and you return it and fix it with the mezuzah already on it, lo havatasa v'lemin asoi kamo chatak v'niach l'sof hamid. This is not tasa asoi, like the Gemara said that if you first, by our Gemara, that if you cut a hole in the reed, put the mezuzah, and then you put it up, then it's tasa l'min asoi. Why? Shaharei mitchilas kfius haya patzim kavua or miderek kfiuso. Because when you first put it up hechsher. It was kavua. So now the fact that you took it down and put it back up again, that's not. You already did the asiyah, and it doesn't take away tas. It doesn't become tas l'min asui. And its raya is the Magamor in Mem Aleph by us in Menachos in the sugi of tzitzis. These Gemaras we're learning over here, they're all the sugyas of Stam and Tzitzis and Sefer Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzah, Tzitzis, they're all here. Very fascinating part of Menachos to learn. So the Gemara says over there in Mem Aleph that a talis that was nikra chutz l'shalosh yitzfor. If you have a regularly properly tied talis, and then one of the corners ripped. So if it ripped, and a pashtus means it ripped off completely. So if it ripped more than 3 tefachim away from the corner, then you can sew it back on and it's kosher. Less than 3 tefachim not. So why less than 3 tefachim not? You have different pshatim. One pshat is because it's a gzera that since you have new threads coming in there, you might. And they're not really in the same tzitzis. They're so close to the tzitzis, less than 3. You might make them part of the tzitzis and machshir with that. It's like a new gzera. The Amram Gaon learns that if it was less than 3, then the tzitzis are no longer in a beged at all. The minimum shear of a beged is 3 tefachim. So if it's still in a beged, then you put it back in. Then it still had a shame tzitzis to it. You put it back on. Less than that, not. So the Amram Gaon says that. Now you ripped the tzitzis, got completely ripped off the beged with his tzitzis. So now, if I would start that case off to begin with like that, like we said before, if you would take a corner, a piece of beged, and make a hole in it and put tzitzis on it, and then tie that onto the talis, that's puzzle. Tasalim and asui. So say the same thing over here. It got ripped off. So now there's an osiyah. Now you put it back on. It should be puzzle. The Gemara says it's kosher as long as you don't bring it from the makom acher. As long as you bring it. Put it back where it started from. You don't bring it from a different place. You use the same tzitzis where they started. That's still kosher. Says the Rebbeinu Simcha, we see from here a raya that even if something, the chiyuv, like the tzitzis, got removed from its makom chiyuv completely, as long as you put it on bakashris, then the hechsher remains. The wood din over here by mezuzah, he took it off from the doorway. So that's a pellet, because that's much further than that case. It's no longer a side chiyuv. There's no longer a side point. It's the actual tzitzis are getting taken off, and the actual mezuzah is being taken out of the doorpost. Even so, it's still not a problem. If somebody can mind muting the noise in the background. Try to maybe. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So that's Rabbeinu Simcha. The Maisa, this question is Rabbi Kiveger in the end of Reish Pei Tes here in Mezuzah speaks about this explicitly. Rabbi Kiveger in the Shulchan Aruch, in the end of Reish Pei Tes, going on there that it says that if you put a mezuzah on the door while it's detached and then you put it on, then it's possible. So Rabbi Kiveger, he brings the name of the Chuas Maras Hason, one of the early Achronim, that says that if you're kovea mezuzah properly, then you take it off of the door with the mezuzah and you put it back on, it's possible. It's tasav l'em and asui. Well, the das Magen Avram, but according to the Magen Avram in Hilchos Tzitzis, you know davka b'kabel b'ais acher l'zeh b'tchilas asiyah. It would only be possible if you take that doorway with the mezuzah and put it into a different house. But if you put it back in the same spot that you took it off of, like the case of Rabbeinu Simcha, then Magen Avram would say that it's okay. Now, he means l'das Magen Avram. He means because Magen Avram paskins by tzitzis. There's actually a machlokas, a very fascinating machlokas. The Beis Yosef in Siman Tes Vav in Hilchos Tzitzis brings down a major machlokas of what is shot in that Gemara that we just quoted by tzitzis. If it rips and put it back on again. So according to the Rush and other Rishonim he brings down, the psul, the problem of bringing it from another place, if you bring tzitzis from another place, is not a problem of tasla and asui. It's a problem of, it says you have to be al kanfos big dechem. There's a din that the kanafos have to belong to the same beged that they were tied in. You can't bring it from a different beged. So according to the Rush, you see that it's not a problem with tasla and asui, even though it would come from another place. It's just a new gzeres kasov. So, but if like by a doorway we shouldn't have such a gzeres kasov, then maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't be a problem. But we certainly see that, and he brings other Rishonim as well, Beis Yosef, that even though it was the corner was totally severed from the beged, it's still not a problem. It's still not taslim and asui. However, there's one opinion of the Mordechai, which the Beis Yosef brings down, and that's what the Maras Hason, the Rebbe brings down, is basing himself on the Mordechai, that the tzitzis is only going to be kosher when it still remain attached a little bit. Torn means torn most of the way, but it's still attached a little bit. Only then is it lo tasel and asui. If it was severed completely, it would be tasel and asui. Then that would be a problem. So it comes out a very basic machlokes rishonim by tzitzis, and now Rebbe Kiveger saying it's the same nafkamina over here by mezuzah. If something becomes totally severed from its makom chiyuv, we have, is that tasel lo min asui or not? The Magen Avram. Now, we'll just quote a Magen Avram. Magen Avram is talking about this halacha, and you can't wear tzitzis into a basic. You can't have your tzitzis out in a basic forest because it's called loig the rush. It's like making fun of the dead. They can't wear tzitzis. So the Shulchan Aruch brings that there were those who would tie up the tzitzis in a way that makes them puzzle. So there shouldn't be a problem of lulling the rush, of making fun of the dead when they go into the basic forest. So the and the Shulchan Aruch says that it doesn't do any. They don't help anything by that. To tie it up doesn't possible it. They didn't make any difference with what they did. It doesn't help. So the Magen Avraham there, this is a Siman Chaf Gimel in Hilchos Tzitzis. The Magen Avraham says, because even though they tie it up, they're not mevatel the mitzvah tzitzis with that. Furthermore, says the Magen Avraham, lefi daitam, according to them, that they were mevatel the tzitzis when they tied it up, when they tied knots in it. If they were mafkia the tzitzis, according to them, when they untie it, now they're going to be machshir those tzitzis by just untying a knot they put into it. If they hold that it was puzzle, now it's a problem with tassel l'min asui. That's the Beis Yosef. That's the Beis Yosef tying is on them. So the levush, Magen Avraham brings that the levush has a kasha on the Beis Yosef. Why should it be tassel l'min asui? It should be no different than the Ramah and Tafresh Chavav by the shlach. You put the shlach, which is the metal roof over the sukkah, you passel the sukkah at that time. When you take it back off again, we say that it's not tassel l'min asui. So the same thing should apply over here also. If you untie the tzitzis, it's not a problem with tassel l'min asui. That's the kasha of the levush. Says in Magen Avraham, a very famous line. The Magen Avraham says, "L'li or l'dami." You can't compare the two. The hasam and a psul b'gufa sukkah, whatever acher amano. There, when you close the roof over it, there's no psul in the kufa sukkah, in the actual sukkah. You didn't do anything to mess up the actual sukkah, to passel the actual sukkah. It's something else from the outside, extraneous, that made it passel, made it you can't be yotzei in it. That's why there's no problem with tassel and asud, because you didn't do anything to the actual sukkah. It didn't affect the original asiyah. The original asiyah stays in place. So it's not a problem, tassel and asud. However, here, if you tie up the tzitzis, according to you, the shitaskem, that you hold that makes the tzitzis passel, you passel the actual tzitzis. You made them not tzitzis. You made them not tzitzis ksheros. And therefore, the Beis Yosef is right, that if you untie it, that would be tasa v'lo min asik. So this is a klal gadol from the Magen Avraham that the poskim all speak about, is that the klal is whether it's you did something to the gufa mitzvah or you did something to a side thing. So now, taking that Magen Avraham back in context of what we learned just now, that Rabbi Kiveger was medayik from the Magen Avraham in Hilchos Tzitzis. The Magen Avraham learns that even if the tzitzis are cut off completely, if the corner was cut off completely, you can re-sew that corner back on with the tzitzis, and it's not a problem with tassel l'min asui. And from there, Rabbi Kiveger wants to infer you could take off the doorway and put it back on again, it will still be okay. Like the Rebbeinu Simcha. The Magen Avraham said it's only if it's a side thing, not if the actual mitzvah. So I would think that taking the doorpost down with this mezuzah is certainly more than just a side thing. But in order for it not to be a steer in the Magen Avraham, we have to say that even that is called a side thing. It's only the tzitzis itself that you did something to, made it tassel l'min asui. So it would have to be in some way that you did something to passel the mezuzah itself in the Magen Avraham to make it tassel l'min asui. But the fact that mezuzah is on a doorpost and it comes down, it's a big chiddush, but I would have thought it only applies to taking a door or a roof off, but the actual doorway not. We see the Magen Avraham is going to learn that even taking the doorway down, that's also not considered gufa mitzvah. The gufa mitzvah is having the mezuzah on the doorpost, and it still is. You didn't affect that. Just the doorpost itself went away. When it goes back, it's not a problem with tasa l'min asli. So based on this, there's a deal, and also Me'achronim, Si Pesach Frank and Mikra Kodesh discusses this at length. I gave you those pages, whoever had a chance to see them. That a fascinating shaila, that there's a shaila in halacha if we paskin that the schach has to be put on. We still have a little leftover of sukkahs. We're not so far away till Hanukkah. Up the Zar, there's still the Orus of Yom Noraim. So we still talk about sukkah. So you need defanos kodmus l'schach. There are more paskins that if you put up the schach before the defanos, before the walls, then it's puzzle. It doesn't have a shem schach unless it has walls around it to begin with. Only then did it cover a building. So now the shaila will be, that's a machlokes, but that's not especially that's how we paskin. That's what Ramah paskins. So now the shaila will be, if the walls are up, just now, I'm sure you heard in Dallas, we had some very nice tornadoes last days of Sukkot, and not just flattened sukkahs, but it flattened houses and Home Depots and major businesses everywhere. So the Chasdei Hashem, it was on the way to our neighborhood. Mamish went right to the Eruv, and then it shifted course and went the other way. Literally went right up to the Eruv and stopped, and shifted course and went around to a different neighborhood. So in a case you had a Ruach Mitzuya, a big Ruach came along and blew down the walls, and the schach still was standing. So now, can I put the walls back up again? Is that going to be a problem with Tasa V'lo Min Asui? Because since if I would have put the schach up before the walls, it's a problem with Tasa Min Asui. Now what about the walls fall down? Is that an issue or not? If to put it back up again? Is this like the shlach going over the roof? Is that considered like a side thing? Are the walls like a tanai, klape the schach? Or is that considered gufa mitzvah? Is that like tying up the tzitzis? Is that mamash pasel, especially since it's exeris akasav? The sukkah needs walls. We learn a drasha that you need to have, 4 minus 1, and the third one is a tefach, but it's a drasha. You need walls of a sukkah. So Si Pesach Frank speaks at this barichos and goes through all these sides back and forth with the shlach roof, etc. And he ends up with the arbitrary Evan, which he says maybe the Magen Avraham tells us it's not in the gufa sukkah. Like let's say if you put a sod in under the schach or something like that, you put but mashenken if the walls fell down. But he ends up that there's a very strong svara of nasa b'kashras. Since it was made b'kashras, the svara that Achronim that they say and the Rishonim say it was made b'kashras, then the kashrus remains unless you did something to masalik that actual kashrus. So even though the walls fell down, it would be possible at that time. He still comes to the halacha that's considered like taking the door off, not like taking away, not like tying up the tzitzis. It's like the shlach roof. He ends up that it's okay. He has an interesting question that in Har Tzvi, or Si Pesach Frank in Har Tzvi, in his Shas and Shuvas, he had a similar shaila that there was a person that had trouble washing their tzitzis. They always get tangled up. So they had an eitzah to sew the corners with the tzitzis in it, and then they'll undo the stitches after they finish washing it, and the tzitzis will stay not all tangled up. So we want to know if that's a problem with Tasa V'lo Min Asui. So he brings the Maaseh brings that if the tzitzis get completely tangled up, the gra holds it's a psul in the actual tzitzis. So to be tangled up, there would be more of a problem with Tasa V'lo Min Asui than sewing it into a corner, which that's really a side problem. It's not really totally possible. You didn't possible actual tzitzis when you did that. You just made it. You can't be yotzi at that time. He brings an Artzos Achayim, which he declares the question that let's say a person is wearing a talis. This goes back to Gershon, to your question, really. This really ties it back to your question. Tzitzis ties to everything. So never pun intended. That if a person is wearing a talis that's hefker, is patur from tzitzis. Has to be yours. You have to own it to be chayav. So let's say someone's wearing a talis, and while they're wearing it, they're mafker it. So anyone who wants this can take it. They're walking to Rosh Rabbin. Anyone who wants this talis can take it. It's hefker. Because nobody wants it, so he takes the zocha to it back again. So he raises the question, the Artzos Chaim, whether you need to make a bracha. When you're zocha to again, since you're putter at the time you're wearing it, and so whether you need to make a new bracha now. So Si Pesach Frank is medayek that the Artzos Chaim only raised the question whether you need a bracha or not, but he didn't raise the question if it's Tasa V'lo Min Asui. Because that is Pashat Artzos Chaim, and that's how really see most Achronim taking on, that even if there's a period of time that the chiyuv went off, if the action, the asiyah remained intact, then it's not a problem with Tasa V'lo Min Asui. At the best, it's a question of brachas. It's not a question of Tasa V'lo Min Asui. And Huadin, everybody says that, now Rabbi Kiveger actually has a question. Kveiger and Shuvas, we'll get to this later on. We learn the sugya in Mem Dalet about ownership of a house, how much that affects mezuzah. Kveiger does actually hold that if you leave the house for the day, or you go out of town or something like that, you come back home, you need to make a new bracha on the mezuzah, because you weren't yotze mezuzah at that time. You were away from your mezuzah. And so you want to say if you go to work all day,
that's the same thing that you weren't mechuyev at that time. You're saying,
right?
Okay.
Come back. So he holds you should make a new bracha. It's a sarach even because they didn't see people do it. But then, but we'll see. Well, when we get there, I'll give you to look at the Chidah in one of his forum. The Kveiger mentions it that in the Birkei Yosef says that it's a special din in Hilchos Brachos. The Chazal are metaken brachos when you do an actual Maisa Asiyah. So that's why he says that we only make the bracha when you're Kaveh the mezuzah, not every time you walk in the house. Because when you're walking, you're not doing anything to the actual mezuzah. You're not doing a Maisa to the mezuzah, and therefore, mitzad Hilchos Brachos, to dear from the Rambam, you only metaken brachos and mitzvahs when you do a Maisa. Masha Enken, that's why we make it. Okay, Masha Enken, that's mitzad the bracha, but even the mitzvah stopped, but the Asiyah, the Maisa was not, the Asiyah that you did in the mitzvah and the mezuzah never was affected. And therefore, it still remained roy the mitzvah and the yeah. Okay. There's a marsham also that if you have a doorway to a gag, to a roof that has no makkah, has no roof, has no makkah around it. He says it's usher to be to go through that doorway. It's usher to go on the roof. The door needs to be sealed. It doesn't have a shem pesach until you make a makkah. So then that could be a new shaila now. That will that become a problem of tasalum and asur if you put a makkah afterwards?
Yeah, but don't we say go to asik mechitza? Like even though like it's Micah, you still mechuyev from a halachic standpoint. You still have walls, right?
No, you don't. It's still somebody can easily fall right through a halachic mechitza, and so lo sasim damim beisecha. You can tell the guy, how'd you fall? There's a good asik, you know.
No, but right. That's off the din and
That's what it says. You shouldn't fall.
Right.
I'll just end off with one fascinating point. With that, it's getting late now, so I'll just end off that. Pasuk Frank says that when is it okay if the walls fall down and put it back up again? Only if sukkah's already started. It already is chal the kedusha sukkah, and already is chal the shem sukkah. Otherwise, if you just made it without the asiyah, without the asiyah sukkah, it never became a sukkah yet until sukkah comes in. So if the walls would fall down before and then you put them back up, that would be a problem. That's the consequence.
So I was going to ask that. I was going to ask that based on what you had been saying earlier. When you were discussing that, but lichora, the entire notion of asiyas sukkah is always done before Shas Chov. We don't build the sukkah on sukkahs itself, right?
Right. So that's what he says that sukkah has to come in and be chal the kedusha sukkah for it to be nigmar the shem sukkah on it. So you do the asiyah before, and then it's nigmar when sukkah comes in.
So if you do the asiyah and then sukkah hasn't come in, and then the asiyah is undone, it's not considered that the Maisa was complete yet.
Right. So his son-in-law says in Nafkamina that there was a Maisa in Yerushalayim that it started raining on Friday, and somebody covered their skach on Friday, and they only took off the cover in the middle of Leil Sukkos. So a certain Rebbe wanted to say it's possible, and then he turned around and changed his mind and said it's okay, not Tassel and Asli. So according to the Pesach of his father-in-law, it should be a problem because when Sukkos came in, there was a psul at that time. It had to be Sukkos has to come in with when it's kosher, in order to cover it and take it off. The shlach has to be off when you make it, and then put it down during Sukkos, but not the shlach is down while Sukkos comes in and they take it off. That could be a problem with Tassel and Asli.
Wow.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so until next time, Mr. Hashem, we'll have a new one on Sunday. Kol Tov.
Kol Tov. Thank you, Abby.